Hello and welcome to Brandtuned, Successful Brand, Successful Business, the show for entrepreneurs and brand creators where we discuss personal and business branding to give you ideas and inspiration for your own brand. I'm Shireen Smith, lawyer, entrepreneur, author, and advocate for developing purpose-based brands to change the world. Chris Radford is a former marketing director at Pepsi and managing director at Head Sports. His business, Differentiate, supports business leaders to create better marketing and sales strategies. He's the author of the book Attractive Thinking, and I'm delighted to have him with us today to discuss, among other things, how to identify your ideal client. So, hello, Chris. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Shireen. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Chris, how did you get into marketing? Tell us a bit more about how you got to where you are today and how you help businesses now.
I started my career in marketing when I left university, and I got a marketing trainee job with United Biscuits, which involved me starting in sales. And so I spent my first day putting price tickets on packets of biscuits in a shop in Harlow. So and learning about the fundamentals of display and of talking to customers and pricing and sales communications right from the off. And then I went in. I moved up through the ranks there, working on Terry's Chocolates and McVitie's Biscuits as a marketing manager, and went to be head of marketing at Pepsi after that, where we launched the Pepsi Challenge, brought a very successful advertising campaign, all about Pepsi being the choice of the new generation. And then I went to spend a couple of years in Head Sports as a managing director of their sports equipment distribution, which was very powerful in learning about dealing with the trade and talking to customers. And then launched Differentiate as a consultancy, which initially was quite focused on analysing markets and numbers for clients, and later developed into the business that is now to help clients create brand strategy that everyone's convinced will work.
Okay. So how long have you been doing that now, Chris?
About 30 years.
What, in Differentiate?
Yes, it was 28 years as an independent business. Yeah.
Wow.
Not working for somebody else. Yeah.
Okay, so the majority then is helping smaller businesses, I guess, or do you still work with large businesses?
The bulk of my work was has been actually with medium to larger businesses. And, my initial clients were people like Mars, creating celebrations and taking Galaxy into the Middle East, turning it into a $750,000 brand, and working with Scott's gardening company, brand Miracle Grow, and then a number of business-to-business clients, and most recently working with a pharmaceutical startup called Maxwellia.
Great. So not just in the biscuit or drinks categories then?
I've done a lot of work in food and drink and consumer products, and that's probably been the bulk of my work. But I have found the principles of attractive thinking have applied very well in business-to-business marketing as well.
Yeah, because I've been doing some work on identifying the ideal client, and there's so much written about products. And, it's quite difficult for people to apply that to a service business. And, yet it's critical to identify your ideal client. So do you have some tips for people on how to do this, how to go about it?
Yeah, I always think that you start by identifying the problem that you're solving for the people that you have actually worked for or that you want to work for. Because as I say, kind of the first question, the attractive thinking approach is 5 questions. And the first one is, who's your customer and what's their problem? And because the raison d'etre, the purpose of a business is really to solve a problem, to address a need for customers. Because if you're not doing that, then you're not going to thrive. If you're just doing something you want to do and no interest to customers, then, and what interests people? People don't engage with brands and businesses because they like them or because they want to do them a favor. They do it because it helps them feel better, helps them helps them with food, helps them with entertainment, helps them with their business, helps make their business more successful. There's all sorts of possible things, but your business will be doing something when people buy things and they go, that's what I need. And when we provide the thing that people need, then businesses will be attracted to us. So your original question to me was identifying the ideal client, and I prefer to phrase it as crystallizing the problem that we solve for that client.
Mm-hmm.
And that will probably give us some definition as to who that person is. I would also caution, and this too much on the idea that there is one kind of model client, because what you'll find is that you'll endlessly attract people that don't fit that. I've been in meetings where we said we have all these off-strategy consumers, people that don't fit the profile but actually buy the product, and that is true of every market, because we get business by through a lot of new customers, a lot of relatively light buyers. Most of our business comes from people who deal with us not as much. The heavy buyers are often not as important as the light buyers in terms of the actual amount of business, the amount of business growth we get. And what I think we can crystallize, though, is the problem that we solve. So whether it's for a giant brand like Apple solving quite a large range of problems, but fundamentally providing us with a very powerful piece of communications equipment that allows us to do all sorts of things, to Mars Bars, the client I used to work for, which is all about energy boost and taste. But there's a brand which Mars is a company with all their different brands. They were always very powerful on each brand has a specific purpose in the needs that it satisfies. So Snickers was for hunger, Mars was for energy, Galaxy was for indulgence, and Maltese is for not feeling too guilty, and so forth.
There is this constant interaction between the product and the customer problem. Like, I would never buy a Mac computer, but I do buy an iPhone. So I guess it's a kind of different customer that they've got for one category of their products. I guess we're all in that same boat, that although we've got a business providing a number of different solutions, when you're looking at a particular product, you're looking at the problem that solves for your customers.
And also you'll find that your customer has the customer that buys from you. You just gave a good example there, Shireen. I mean, customer buys from you also buys from somebody else. And they're addressing different things. So it's helpful to understand what else people are buying as well as what they're buying from us. I think that computer example is relevant. It was certainly true of the legal services work that I did. It's definitely true of the pharmaceutical work that we're doing. You tend to find that people have a kind of portfolio of brands that they use, and that portfolio shifts over time.
Yeah, I think that's why it's also quite complicated, because it's not just one customer profile. Like, you've got to find different clumps of people who would respond to what you've got. Like, so it's not going to be baby boomers or millennials. It's going to be people with a certain worldview. And how to identify that is, I think, really tricky.
Yeah, those generational definitions of market groups are, I think, quite unhelpful.
Yeah.
Because essentially it's an age band, and there's all sorts of different people within that age band. Millennials cover a wide range of people, baby boomers equally, and different wealth levels, different attitudes, different orientation to their sense of self-worth, and all sorts of things. So, I mean, when I look at differentiate and as an example, so what I did to identify the client was just to look back at exactly who it was. So, as a lady, the CEO of Maxwellia, Anna Maxwell, an independent, ambitious founder, raising money to get a company that's going to create new pharma brands by switching medicines from ones that are available only on prescription to ones that will be available over the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And to another recent client, Martin Brady, who used to work as the general manager at Scott's in the UK, and more recently has been the managing director of Squires. And he got us in because he was taken on the new job as managing director of Squires, and he wanted to set some direction and practical strategies and tasks. And he wanted to get the company to create them and to prioritize them. And we ran some workshops for them and helped them work through that. And he called me the other day, actually, just to say, while he was closed and all staff were on furlough and what have you, but to say how well it had worked and how they were optimistic about their ability to pick up as they've now been allowed to open their stores again. And so
how do you help someone like that narrow their focus on the customer that they should advertise to, and
in that case, the priority there was specific initiatives out of each of their product areas. How we did it was we did the exercise of we got a group of the management together, from not just the senior management, but from people from the stores and people from the head office. And we got them to work through descriptions of all the different types of customers they help, and in a workshop. And we also got them to then work through all the problems that those people have that cause them to want to go to a garden centre. Everything from, I like a nice day out, want something to do, to specific problems in the garden, to seeking advice, to simple, quite functional things like, I need a barbecue, and of course, a lot of their business is cafes. So we also had quite a big look at the whole time out and the kind of people that were using the cafe environments, what occasions. It's often another valuable thing. What occasion, time of day. And we then did some analysis and ranking and using some of my systems to determine which were the activities where Squires would be able to be most successful and compete against other retail outlets or other opportunities to take a day out, and which were likely to be big markets or small markets, which were likely to be more profitable markets or less profitable markets. And so we helped kind of create a framework and then led them into a much more creative phase of, well, what could we do then? And then a system of assessment of about 200 or 300 ideas they had to get down to 12 major initiatives that the company was going to get behind and invest in, from improving the cafes to building up the pets business to and so forth, and various things that they elected to do.
So how did you choose who to question about that? Did you?
In that case, we did this out of the existing knowledge of the management team. So I just wanted people from within the business covering the functions from finance to personnel to marketing to operations, store managers. So we got the qualification for participating was to have some insight into how the company works and to have some insight into how customers think and behave. But from day-to-day experience. And it's almost always where we start before we go into any market research, is we start with what the management team understand as the answer to the question, who are my customers and what are the problems that we help them solve? And then we go on to the question, how do we solve those problems better than other people?
So then you're doing market research in terms of finding out what the competitors are doing out there?
And the market research we then go on to do is usually with, we certainly look at competitors, but that's like desk research, yeah. And then we would go into the customer research we would do is about the problems as to how important are the problems they have, and then how important to them are the different problems. So which are the biggest ones that really burn, and then also what kind of features of the business are most attractive and most appealing. When we do market research, it's about insight into the customer needs, behaviours, and wants, rather than into what customers tell us they might buy in the future.
Right, and this idea of finding an emotional reason why the customer would buy from you, how does that sit with the idea that they're not sort of necessarily going to be fans who are going to buy from you more than once? I mean,
it's because people only buy from people they like.
Mm-hmm.
There are different kinds of emotion. I mean, in Maxwellia, we talk about leaving people in control of their health, leaving people feeling in control of their health.
Mm-hmm.
The company is creating brands that will be known for switching medicines from prescription for making medicines that were previously only available on prescription to making it easy to buy. Like Nurofen was switched some years ago, and more recently Viagra was switched by Pfizer, and and this leaves people feeling in control. So understanding the kind of the brand experience. A mentor of mine, Mike Harris, created the bank First Direct, and he always talked about the fact that the whole goal of that brand was to leave people feeling totally taken care of. And when you understand that brand experience, and in Miracle-Gro in the gardening, it was leaving people feeling relaxed. That was easy. We always used to say there that some of our best customers were what we call the pots, patios, and the glass of wine group. So people who didn't really want to do gardening, but they like sitting out in the garden and enjoying it. So the job of our products was to make it as easy as possible for them to have a weed-free, green, attractive garden with abundant plant growth and so forth. So
right. So if you've got all these different people, how do you choose who is the ideal, or are they all part of your ideal client? Sort of, they're different clumps of.
We look at having got a list of different types of people, from an internal, from a brainstorm, which you could do on your own if it's your own business, but it's a bit hard. It's really a lot easier to bounce ideas off somebody else. And a group of 3 people or 5 or 6 people is ideal. Yeah. But then, how do you rank them? What I do is look at which are the biggest groups, which are the groups that are increasing, in numbers of people or amount they're spending. So it's growing. Which are the highest value, and also which of them have unmet needs, who are struggling to get the solution to the problem that we solve, and which where we think that we actually do it better than other people. So I apply an analytical matrix to all of those 5 variables, and from that pops out some clarity about which are the most attractive clients for us as a business. I call it pinpointing the answer to the question, who are your customers and what's their problem? And but it all starts with this thing about, but it always comes back to the problems that crystallizing what problems you solve for a business. In the case of Differentiate, it's about getting a strategy that everybody's convinced will work. I found that the biggest problem people have is convincing themselves that the strategy is worth investing in, because they're not sure it'll work or not. And then even bigger, if there's a team of people involved and a finance director involved, of getting everybody behind the plan. And
so you're dealing with their marketing strategy. How does that sit with the business strategy as a whole?
Well, the business strategy, the brand strategy that we develop actually kind of defines just about everything in the business, and the business strategy as a whole. So then, once you know what products you're trying to sell and how you're trying to attract people, or what services you're trying to offer and how you're trying to attract people to that defines all of the production, the operations, the financial structure, the people, all of the the sales teams, all of these functions that you need to perform to deliver that customer experience.
We'll take a short break at this point, as I'd like to mention the brand-tuned series of webinars which support founders to think through their brand, taking IP into account at the right time, which is before you make firm decisions about what to create. Just visit brandtuned.com and the webinars are referenced right there on the homepage. Okay, back to the podcast now. I guess the number one problem is this understanding your customer, and how can we really do it better than anyone else, than our competitors, What would you suggest somebody can do to make sure they really understand their customers' problems better than their competitors?
The first thing to do is to do the thing I was talking about, in a kind of brainstorm it out yourselves, is to list them out. Then, because everybody involved in the business has some experience of customers, so everybody's got very valuable insights into that already. Then there are really 2 simple tools that you can apply. One is a series of customer interviews to get 10 or 20 minutes with your customer, and explore with them and get them talking about how they operate in the market, and also assess your list with them of are these problems, which are the biggest, which are the smallest, and you can do those customer interviews. The easiest way, to be honest, is one at a time, and but you can also organise kind of group discussions, but they take a lot more effort, and it's quite difficult to get everybody in the room at the same place at the same time, or online. And of course, today's world, that would be online, which you can do it all online, courtesy of Zoom and various other services. And that's what we call qualitative research, to get under the skin and understand, and more quantitative research, which is to look at the prevalence and scale, is to survey the market. And you can use two primary tools to get at that. One is, if you've got a customer list, recognize that's not the market. That's your customer list. It's a biased sample from the market, but it's often easy to access, and they're often quite responsive, especially if you've been nice to them in the past. Or you can go to the market by approaching companies like Research Now and so forth. They changed their name to Dynata, and companies that provide customer panels that represent groups of customers. And then you get a more properly structured sample of the market. But there's a fairly significant cost in that. And there you use the simplest thing is online surveys, which you can create yourself on SurveyMonkey, Survey Gizmo, or you can get agencies to code them up in a more sophisticated way for you. But even if you do it yourself, what I would always do is get some advice on how to organize the questionnaire and structure the questions. Because there is some expertise in writing questions that don't lead people into giving them the answer that you want to hear. The answer you want to hear is what they actually think, not lead them to.
Sure.
Leading. Every market research can supply you with all the answers that you want. I can do this as well. We can all design questions that I know exactly why the answers will come out, but that's not what we want. We want to find out what people really think. So there's a skill in writing those.
And probably longhand answers rather than just picking a range of
open-ended. Yes, that's right. Yeah. But if you want to get numbers on things, you tend to have to sort of close off lists and things. So to get the prevalence of what's most important to a group or least important to a group. I mean, the most common questions I ask people are, what are the problems you have when we did some work with some people providing conveyancing services for people buying and selling houses, and sort of what are the problems you have when you're looking for conveyancing services, or what are the problems you have in the house transaction, and then give them a list and say which of these are the biggest, which are the smallest, and that led us to understand the importance of things like speed in that particular case, and the importance of proactively managing the transaction to a timetable, and keeping and communicating with them, and providing communications to people. You bought a house recently, didn't you, Shireen?
Yes.
So I know that it's all vividly still in your memory as to the stresses around that, but I think there's no real clever. Now, the other thing I would recommend is there is this thing called social listening. Looking at your Facebook's a Facebook page or a Facebook group, and I certainly would look at those things, but be very careful about how representative that is and what people actually are willing to put onto those things compared to a private conversation with a customer or a properly structured survey. And
and they may not actually be your ideal customers anyway, the people making comments on social.
And but you can do these things yourself. If you get professionals to do them, it will almost certainly be better. But the tools are out there now to help people do it themselves.
Great. I think I know the answer you will give to this from your book, but let's hear you. What do you think about business advisors telling people to narrow their focus and pick a niche?
I think do that with caution. It is attention. If you pick a niche, recognize that is the limit of your market. However, the advantage of doing that is that it may be a lot easier to stand out and seem relevant to customers. So if you're providing marketing services and you say, I provide marketing services to accountants, then that's probably all the business you're going to get, but you may well be more competitive than everybody else. And if you're happy with that market size, then defining and expressing that niche, telling customers that you work for these types of people or work for people with these kind of problems is a good thing to do. My hesitation with larger businesses is that it can be catastrophic because you actually don't realize how much business you're getting from people who aren't your ideal customers. And if you shut them out of your marketing communications, some spectacular misfires by Burger King versus McDonald's in the past, by them concentrating on their core market of what they thought their core market was of young adult males, and completely missing the fact that so much of their business was families, older people, children, and all sorts of other customers, and their communications misfired massively as a result. And meanwhile, McDonald's gaily went along advertising themselves as being suitable for everybody, and in particular, consistently innovating their product offer to attract newer audiences, whether it be health, various forays into healthier food, cheaper food, more premiums. I mean, they've always got something new coming out, and they seem to understand that product innovation is a great way to build your brand and attract customers.
Oh, interesting. So is there a brand you particularly admire, Chris? And if so, why?
Yeah, you asked me that, and I thought about it. And then, so what I've decided to do is talk about the one that first came to my mind when I read the question. And the answer to that is Riverford, which is delivers vegetable boxes to houses all over the country. Set up by a farmer called Guy Watson, and who he set the business up following some very unsatisfactory conversations with supermarkets who kind of treated him very poorly as a supplier. He tells some horrendous tales, and then eventually he just walked out and thought, I've had enough of this, and decided to build a direct relationship with local customers, which started off by delivering veg boxes around Devon, and now it seems to do it all over the country, and there's farms in different places in the UK and in France, and every week you get the option of some stunningly fresh, beautifully prepared vegetables. He tells stories. He sends out stories every week about what's going on, about what's bothering him, about what's happening in the farms, whether it's the weather, the government, Brexit, or whatever. He talks about all of these issues in a very frank and refreshing way. So you kind of get a relationship with the brand, and they now develop their website, so it's pretty easy to manage the supply, and they had a bit of a hiccup with as demand went through the roof following lockdown. So struggling to manage that, but they sort of got on top of that. So I like the way they tell stories. I like the phenomenal reliability and quality of the product, and the passion to bringing organic food sourced with a minimum of environmental impact, and it's dropped on our doorstep every week. So,
how long have they been going? Because I've heard of them.
Well, we've been using. I'm not sure. 20 years. We've been a customer with them for nearly all those 20 years. So,
20 years, okay. So they've had time to make an impact.
But they started as a family in Devon with a farm. So, and we all start somewhere, don't we?
Yeah.
So I like, what did I like about them? It's the storytelling, I think, and the quality of the product. the two things that stand out for me.
Great. So thank you very much for appearing on the podcast, Chris. How can people contact you? Where's the best way? How can they find out more?
chrisradford.net or chris@chrisradford.net is my email. And the website, chrisradford.net, has a contact page. My preferred and my best recommendation is to be honest, is to get the book, Attractive Thinking, on Amazon. The Kindle is only 99p at the moment.
That's a bargain.
I'm not quite sure what we reduced it as a celebration of lockdown, and the paperback is I can't remember what that's priced at now. It kind of Amazon changes the price all the time, and that really does explain. It's a walkthrough, the 5 questions that drive brand strategy, and it talks you through the whole thing of what's the point of your business, what's the purpose of your business, and how you make that work. And it gives you a very clear idea of how I think. And if I would say to somebody, if they're interested in finding out more, that's the best way to do it. I do blog sometimes from the website as well, and that will increase shortly. And but the books really sets out, you know, whether you wanted to work with me or not as a result of reading that.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book. I found out about Byron Sharp, is it? How Brands Grow. And, you know, it set me on a journey of discovery about brands. So, it's excellent.
There are some fairly striking rules of the way the customers behave that I think are poorly understood in the SME world. That I try to explain, bring them alive in the book, and explain them as simply as possible.
Yeah, it was excellent. So thank you very much, Chris. And
pleasure.
That's it.
Enjoyed it.
All right, then.
All right. Thank you very much, Shireen. Thank you.
That's it for this week. Do subscribe to the Brandtuned newsletter to get weekly updates. I'd also love to get your feedback. Just send me an email to info@brandtuned.com. Finally, if you liked the episode, please do share it with your friends and colleagues and review it on iTunes or whichever platform you use to listen to podcasts. If you leave us a 5-star review, it means more people will listen and we can spread the word much more quickly about the podcast. Thank you, and bye for now.